Welcome, everybody. I am Michael Haley Goldman. I am the Executive Director of New Hampshire Humanities. Thank you for being with us tonight on I don't even know how to describe the weather. Sometimes feel like we're fighting the weather because it's too gorgeous outside, and I can't believe you're inside on a Friday evening that nice. Tonight, you probably should stay inside. At least in our part of New Hampshire, the rain is coming in occasional spurts. So hopefully you can get comfortable. Thanks for joining us for what is part of our Humanities at Home series, but it is also part of the larger project we've been doing and working on for years to support really looking at the United States at 250. This is part of our Big Watch series. Big Watch was created in partnership with New Hampshire Public Broadcasting to bring just a little bit of the Ken Burns documentary, The American Revolution, to places all around the state. More than 40 locations are part of that as a series. Some of those have already happened, but you should check our website, nhhumanities.org, to see if there's still a program coming near you. Chances are, if there isn't one coming up, it's because you've already missed it in your neighborhood. But we're really so pleased to have one of the facilitators, Dr. Courtney Marshall, as part of this. She's already been part of these programs around the state to bring it to those of you who want to call in from home. It makes the program a little bit different from the way that this often works for those of you who are longtime Humanities at Home participants. This is a little more participatory than some of the ones we do. Usually we have kind of a presentation and then some Q&A. This is going to be a little bit more like a dialogue. So we encourage you to take part. We hope you will take part. There will be opportunities, and Courtney will let you know when the right moment will be to jump in with your thoughts and your reflections about the American Revolution and what it means today. This is also should probably mention some of our housekeeping program notes, that this program is possible thanks to members of our community like you. New Hampshire Humanities really relies on support of our community to make these programs accessible all across the state. If you want to support New Hampshire Humanities and the work we're doing, including more than 700 programs last year, reaching more than 15,000 people in 145 communities, or find out if there are programs near you, or sign up for our newsletter so you can learn about what's happening, please do go to our website, nhhumanities.org. Next up, I also should mention, this is a Zoom call. We're doing this so that nobody else has their camera on. So people have already kind of figured out that we are recording this. If you're comfortable being recorded, you can turn on your camera, but if you would feel better keeping it off, that is fine with us as well. It is participatory, so we're going to encourage you to use the chat. Please do keep in mind that you are a member of a community, and use all of your usual respectful, thoughtful approaches to being part of a community, and be respectful of the dialogue and make it as meaningful and sincere as possible. That's really what we want from this communication. And the same goes if you are able to ask a question or make a comment and you turn on your camera, that's great. But we do want you to kind of think of yourselves as part of this community. So thank you for doing that. If you do have questions, you will find on your screen under the word React, if you look at the menu bar at the bottom of the Zoom, when you click on React, it will allow you to raise your hand so that we know that you have a question or comment. If you are having technical problems, please do put that into chat, and somebody on our team will try to help you out with those technical problems. I think I have covered all of those technical details, and we'll get into the formal recognition. I don't know, actually, because I have not seen, we were hoping that we would be joined by Dawn DeAngelis, the Vice President and Chief Content Officer for New Hampshire Public Broadcasting, our partner on this larger project. Big thank you to NHPBS for partnering with us on this, making it possible to get this documentary into so many places all around the state and have these great conversations. And then also want to introduce tonight's facilitator, Courtney Marshall, who currently teaches in the English department at Phillips Exeter. Before Exeter, she was teaching in English and Women's Studies at UNH, and also enjoys researching African-American food history and teaching Zumba classes, which I think is just, one of those things I didn't know about you, Courtney. So thank you for being here with us tonight. Courtney is an amazing facilitator who's worked with us on all kinds of great programs over the years, and we're so pleased that she could be part of the program tonight. So without further ado, Courtney, please take it away.
Great. Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you Very, very much. I'm always so appreciative to New Hampshire Humanities for an opportunity to get to know, scoot this back a little bit, to get to know my neighbors, my friends, my fellow Granite Staters, as well as we have somebody here from Vermont. So that's awesome too. Welcome. So we are going to watch the film, and I will say that I will be sharing the film from my laptop. So again, if you have issues where you can't hear or anything, please type in the chat. I will make sure that the volume is turned way up. We were also having an issue because there's no way to, there probably is a way, but we are not going to figure it out right now, to show the film and push me away, put me away. So I will sit and I will look, interested and astute, but don't pay attention to me. Pay attention to the film, and I will be nice and quiet. So again, I just want to send just a big welcome. We have the chat here. Thank you so much to those of you who put in your location. If as the you watch the film and you have a question that you want to discuss or a topic you just want to bring up, by all means, type it there and we will get to you. All right, so I'm going to get started. All right, I'm going to share the screen and share. And I'll and then I'll turn the volume up. All right, let me do this. Right.
The American Revolution caused an impact felt around the world. The fight would take ingenuity, determination, and hope for a new tomorrow to turn the tide of history and set the American story in motion. What would you like the power to do? Bank of America.
A small spark kindled in America, a flame has arisen, not to be extinguished. Without consuming, it winds its progress from nation to nation and conquers by a silent operation. Man finds himself changed and discovers that the strength and powers of despotism consist wholly in the fear of resisting it, and that in order to be free, it is sufficient that he wills it. Thomas Paine.
We know our lands are now become more valuable. The white people think we do not know their value, but we are sensible that the land is everlasting. Kanasotego, spokesman for the Six Nations.
Long before 13 British colonies made themselves into the United States, the Six Nations of the Iroquois Confederacy, Seneca, Cayuga, Onondaga, Tuscarora, Oneida, and Mohawk, had created a union of their own that they called the Haudenosaunee, a democracy that had flourished for centuries.
We heartily recommend union. We are a powerful confederacy, and by your observing the same methods our wise forefathers have taken, you will acquire fresh strength and power. Therefore, whatever befalls you, never fall out one with another.
In the spring of 1754, the celebrated scientist and writer Benjamin Franklin proposed that the British colonies form a similar union. He printed a cartoon of a snake cut into pieces above the dire warning, "Join or die." A few weeks later at Albany, New York, Franklin and other delegates from 7 colonies agreed to his plan of union, and then went home to try and sell it. But when the plan was presented at the colonial capitals, each of the individual legislatures rejected it because they did not want to give up their autonomy. The plan died, but the idea would survive. 20 years later, join or die would be a rallying cry in the most consequential revolution in history.
We are in the very midst of a revolution, the most complete, unexpected, and remarkable of any in the history of nations. Objects of the most stupendous magnitude, and measures in which the lives and liberties of millions yet unborn are intimately interested, are now before us. John Adams.
The American Revolution was not just a clash between Englishmen over Indian land, taxes, and representation, but a bloody struggle that would engage more than 24 nations, European as well as Native American, that also somehow came to be about the noblest aspirations of humankind. It was fought in hundreds of places, from the forests of Quebec to the backcountry of Georgia and the Carolinas, from the rough seas off England, France, and in the Caribbean, to the towns and orchards of Indian country. The fighting would take place on roads and in villages and cities, by woods and fields, and the long waterways with old American names, the Susquehanna, the Tennessee, and the Ohio, the Oriskany, the Catawba, and the Chesapeake, and along waters with newer names, the Charles, the Hudson, and the Schuylkill, the Brandywine, the Cooper, and the Ashley, and finally, the York. The war grew out of a multitude of grievances lodged against the British Parliament by British subjects living an ocean away in 13 otherwise disunited colonies. It was also a savage civil war that pitted brother against brother, neighbor against neighbor, American against American, killing tens of thousands of them.
However great the blessings to be derived from a revolution in government, the scenes of anarchy, cruelty, and blood which usually preceded, and the difficulty of uniting a majority in favor of any system, are sufficient to make every person who has been an eyewitness recoil at the prospect of overturning empires. Abigail Adams.
The American Revolution was the first war ever fought, proclaiming the unalienable rights of all people. It would change the course of human events.
It's our creation myth, our creation story. It tells us who we are, where we came from, what our forebears believed, and what they were willing to die for. That's the most profound question any people can
ask themselves. What the American Revolution gave the United States was an actual idea of a moment of origin, which many other countries in the world don't have. And it has invested these particular years and these particular people with a set of stakes that are so far beyond what any set of events and any set of people can plausibly carry, that it has made the way that Americans think about this period very unreal and detached.
One of the most remarkable aspects of the Revolutionary War is that you had such different places come together as one nation. I'm not sure there is a state anywhere in the world in the late 18th century that has as wide variety of people who inhabit it. And so it really is actually kind of remarkable the way that that nation ends up cohering, not around culture, not around religion, not around ancient history. It was coming together around a set of purposes and ideals for one common cause.
Events like these have seldom, if ever before, taken place on the stage of human action. For who has before seen a disciplined army formed from such raw materials? Who that was not a witness could imagine that men who came from the different parts of the continent, strongly disposed to despise and quarrel with each other, would become but one patriotic band of brothers? George Washington.
When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Everything that we believe in comes out of the revolution. Our ideas of liberty, equality, it's the defining event of our history. All men are created equal. That is the most famous and important phrase in our history. If we don't celebrate it, we have no reason to be a people. And Lincoln knew that, and that's why he says, all on it to Jefferson.
Thomas Jefferson was proposing something altogether new and radical in the world. It was the American people's right, he argued. It was their duty to throw off tyranny and learn to govern themselves.
That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness.
To my dear Betsy, my wife, it is hard to be quite happy when one full half at least of both body and soul is left at home. But believe it, I am not more mortal here in the neighborhood of the British cannon than I should be was I happy in your peaceful, loving arms. Till my God calls me, I am immortal. Philip Vickers Fithian.
Philip Vickers Fithian of Cohansey, New Jersey, was a newly married 28-year-old Presbyterian clergyman, recently appointed chaplain of a militia brigade. He was a graduate of the College of New Jersey at Princeton, where his classmates had included Aaron Burr and James Madison. After college, he spent a year as a tutor on a Virginia plantation, where, seeing the inhuman cruelty of slavery up close, he introduced the owner's children to the work of the enslaved poet Phillis Wheatley. In New York, Fithian found himself sleeping on the floor of a Loyalist's abandoned home, conducting prayer meetings twice a day, and afterwards visiting the hospitals filled with men dying from dysentery.
Here I must daily visit among many in a contagious disorder. But I am not discouraged, nor dispirited. I am willing to hazard and suffer equally with my countrymen, since I have a firm conviction that I am in my duty.
When we really take a look at what these regiments were like, we see a lot of individuals who are not carrying arms, including women, including children, including servants, medical personnel, chaplains, and there are all kinds of individuals there that are essential parts of these armies, that are doing essential labor, without whom I think the army couldn't operate.
Braintree, Massachusetts. The best accounts we can collect from New York assure us that our men fought valiantly. We are no ways dispirited here. If our men are all drawn off, and we should be attacked, you would find a race of Amazons in America. Abigail Adams.
Every army engaged on either side in the Revolution would be accompanied by a moving village of civilians, men, women, and children. Most of the women were soldiers' wives who cared for the wounded and washed and cooked and mended for the troops. Some sold provisions, including rum. George Washington often resented feeding all the women and children, but he also understood, he said, that he had somehow to provide for them or lose by desertion, perhaps to the enemy, some of the oldest and best soldiers in the service. Women acted as spies, and a handful disguised themselves and fought as men until they were found out. But most made their contributions to the war effort away from the battlefield.
Preston, Connecticut. Dear husband, I hope that I shall have the pleasure of your company at home this winter. The anxieties of the mind cannot be accounted for, especially when ties of flesh and blood bind them. My only comfort now is at present in the dear little pledges of our love, our children. When I see them, I see my dear when so glorious a cause calls him from my arms. My country, oh my country, your affectionate wife till death, Lois.
With sons and husbands and fathers away, some women turned their homes into boarding houses to pay the bills. On farms, women already caring for children and households now slaughtered hogs, cut and stacked firewood, harvested wheat, and brought it to market.
The men say we have no business with political matters. It is not in our sphere. But I won't have it thought that we are capable of nothing more than minding the dairy, visiting the poultry house, and all such domestic concerns. Our thoughts can soar aloft. We can form conceptions of things of higher nature. Eliza Wilkinson.
Okay. All right. So wait, okay, I am. All right, so I'm sorry, I forgot to mention at the very beginning that we were going to pause the film about halfway through just to have a little bit of conversation. We'll head right back into the film shortly. but I would like to maybe start out, and I know if you would like to, you could certainly turn your camera on. That would be wonderful for us to see your faces. But also in the chat, I would love to know, just to start out, what brought you here today to this event. When you think about, and I'll type this in the chat as well. I always found that. So what brings you here tonight, besides the rain starting over here? When you think about the revolution, what comes to mind? And so you can unmute yourself. What role do you, we just saw people, women and children serving as support for soldiers. We also saw women actually picking up arms and being soldiers. What role do you think you would play when you think about it? Let me see. Okay. Oh wait, I saw some. Okay. Let's see. Oops. Trying to, there we go.
And if you don't feel like jumping in on camera, put stuff into the chat too. That would be great.
Yes. So this is a squash. What is it? So I'll just read. So JL says, I'm enjoying finding different perspectives about this first Civil War. Oh, it's starting to thunder. So hopefully you can't hear the thunder. Anita Klein, I enjoy the humanity at home. Thinking and learning more about this Ken Burns and Company documentary is particularly important to me in these times of 47. Nancy, I grew up within 1 mile of Adams houses in Quincy, Massachusetts. Went to Adams School. History took off for me as a young child. That's wonderful. So we have some history buffs, people finding personal connections to the story.
I'm also curious, Courtney, I don't know if sorry for jumping in.
Oh, please.
If how many people have actually seen all 12 hours of it? Because that's something that, some people I suspect are new. I see a few hands here. And if you're coming, and Anita, are you also raising your hand to talk? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I was just going to say that I saw the whole series. I learned a lot more about what I thought I knew about who was involved and the different facets of the revolution. And this is a great opportunity to I'm sorry, feel all of the different peoples and events that were underneath or were the basis for the revolution.
Great. Wonderful. Okay. See, oh, raise hand. That's cool. That's cool. Other people. Let's see. Nancy Roberts, I think I would have wanted to have a part in the creation of a country which valued people as individuals who cared for others. We think about that line, all men are created equal. I'll also put that in the chat, right? Which is also another place to sit and to think about what that means. Finally, Violet Anderson, I'm new, curious about the formation of democracy, especially in these political times. So it seems like, at least in the chat, that folks are finding connections between what's happening today, our current moment, and this moment in American history. And as we keep going, I would love for us to think about what might be the lessons learned from the revolutionary period that we might apply to today. I also, in watching this film, I think about what might someone say if they come along and they make a documentary, 200 years from now, there's a documentary about us. What role would we play? Would we be those, men, women, and children, well, maybe not doing laundry, but finding ways to support, the cause, support this, cause for freedom? Would we be writing letters? What would we be doing? I think is really important for us to think about. So that's why I asked that question. When you watch this film, where do you see yourself? Like, where do you see a connection to other Americans, or across the march of time, right? Across centuries, where do you see that connection? I think is really important to talk about. Oh, I'm so glad thank you for this presentation. It was wonderful. That's really nice. I hope everybody, if you're somewhere where it's raining, hopefully you're nice and somewhere, cozy and, with your feet up. Well, maybe that would have been your role during the revolution. You would have been the one, chilling with your feet up. So even if that was you, welcome to you as well. All right, we're going to head back. Oh, I see there's a note. I will fix. So there was an issue with the sound. Is that what I see?
The sound is definitely compressing the background audio so the people speaking come through just fine, but the music in the background and things like that seems to be squelched by Zoom in some way. So I don't know if it's fixable, but we'll see what we can do.
Okay. Go ahead.
If you click on the menu on the audio button and you uncheck noise removal under microphone modes, that might fix it.
Yes.
We can try.
So it's asking me to switch. So if I uncheck it, that's the default, but there are two other options. Personalized audio isolation and original sound for musicians.
Oh.
No.
Yes. Let's try one of those.
Okay.
What were they again? Sorry.
One of them is original sound, which I think sounds appealing.
I'll try.
Yeah, let's try that.
Oh, Anita says we need the rain in the southeast corner of New Hampshire. That's good. This has nothing to do with anything, but I work at Phillips Exeter, and so the students decided to create a food forest. So right outside of my house, they planted service berries, and they have this Three Sisters garden that is corn, squash, and beans. And so what's wonderful is the person who waters them is away this week. And so it was my job to water them. But we've gotten all this rain this week that I don't want to touch it, because I feel like if I go out there and I start to water it, I'm going to mess them up. And so it's nice that I don't want to mess it up. Hopefully I don't get hit by lightning. You have popcorn out there. All right, back to the film. All right, so I'm going to go back to sharing, and we'll see how this sounds. All right. Hopefully it behaves for us. All right. Okay. Back to sharing. All right.
We have been sent into life at a time when the greatest lawgivers of antiquity would have wished to have lived. When, before the present epocha, had 3 millions of people full power and a fair opportunity to form and establish the wisest and happiest government that human wisdom can contrive. John Adams.
As Washington and Howe faced off against one another in New York, In Philadelphia, the Continental Congress had been laboring to adopt Articles of Confederation, meant to formally bind all 13 states together, while also guaranteeing the independence of each. A first tentative step toward a permanent government for the new United States.
When we think about our American Revolution, we of course think about independence from Britain, and that's a big deal. But we also need to think about this is the formation of Republican government, and it's also the formation of our Union of our states. And all three of those were enormous gambles. They were unprecedented. There had never been the foundation of a republic out of a revolution, and these 13 colonies had had bitter rivalries with one another. And so forming a union out of these states was going to be as difficult as achieving independence from Britain.
Congress debated draft articles for weeks on the first floor of the Pennsylvania State House, where they had just declared independence in July. They were held up over a host of issues, including apportionment, boundary disputes, taxation, and autonomy of the individual states.
Congress was a disputatious assembly and not necessarily an efficient assembly through these years. Yes, they are running a war. Yes, they are founding a nation. But there's also a tremendous amount of infighting. There's a tremendous amount of inertia. There are more committees than anyone could count. And there were secret committees. For example, the first person sent to France to solicit aid from the French for the revolution is sent without the knowledge of the rest of Congress. As John Jay will later say to George Washington, there is as much intrigue in Congress as there is at the Vatican, and as little secrecy as there is in a boarding school.
Meanwhile, upstairs in the same building, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania held a convention of its own to establish its government. Similar meetings were being held in other states. All of the new constitutions would guarantee freedom of the press, fair trials, and due process under law, and made sure power rested not with autocratic governors, but with legislators elected by propertied men. Pennsylvania took things a step further. They created the most egalitarian constitution in the new United States, with a Bill of Rights and a one-house legislature elected by tax-paying working men as well as property owners, all of which worried many of the delegates downstairs.
Pennsylvania had a radical constitution where almost any white free man could vote and stand for office, which had never happened before, pretty much anywhere. People were committed to using the revolution to make it a real social revolution, a real economic revolution, and get free working people, us men, white men, a say in government, which was a radical idea at the time. John Adams wasn't for that. Samuel Adams wasn't for that. Richard Henry Lee wasn't for that. When John Adams read that Constitution, his response was, quote, "Good God."
In the new code of laws, I desire you would remember the ladies and be more generous and favorable to them than your ancestors. Do not put such unlimited power into the hands of the husbands. Remember, all men would be tyrants if they could. If particular care and attention is not paid to the ladies, we are determined to foment a rebellion and will not hold ourselves bound by any laws in which we have no voice or representation. Abigail Adams.
There will be no end of it. New claims will arise. Women will demand a vote. Lads from 12 to 21 will think their rights not enough attended to. And every man who has not a farthing will demand an equal voice with any other in all acts of state. It tends to confound and destroy all distinctions and prostrate all ranks to one common level. John Adams.
It's a misconception to think of the founders as being pro-democracy. But I think it's also a misconception to think that their failure to be democratic is some sort of flaw or error or something they just kind of missed. They were very adamantly opposed to democracy. Democracy came to America with all of the problems that came with it. not as a direct purpose of the American Revolution, really, but as an unintended consequence.
By the time Pennsylvania had ratified its constitution, the debates over the Articles of Confederation downstairs in Congress had become so heated, the prospect of compromise seemed so remote, that the delegates agreed to table the subject. Frustrated and worried about his sick wife, Thomas Jefferson returned home to Virginia, the place he still called my country. These soldiers were different from the men who had rallied after Lexington and Concord. Most of them had been farmers and artisans, propertied men with taxes to pay, creditors to appease, crops to sow and harvest. From now on, the Continental Army would be made up predominantly of the poorest of the poor, jobless laborers and landless tenants, second and third sons without hope of an inheritance, debtors and British deserters, indentured servants and apprentices, felons hoping to win pardons for their service, immigrants from Ireland and immigrants from Germany, or their descendants who had never learned English. John Adams had worried that only the meanest, idlest, most intemperate and worthless men in America could ever be persuaded to serve more than a year. But victory would be impossible without them. When patriotic speeches and free rum failed to attract enough recruits, some states instituted drafts. Names were drawn from a hat. Married men were exempted. Propertied draftees wanting to avoid service could hire substitutes at fees to be negotiated with their replacements. Some towns managed to avoid sending any men to war by paying men from neighboring villages to go. South Carolina advertised for vagrants and idle, disorderly persons. Thousands of African Americans, enslaved and free, served alongside whites in units from New England all the way south to Georgia. Some volunteered, some were drafted. Many stood in for their gun-shy enslavers. Connecticut and Rhode Island would later promise enslaved recruits their freedom when the war ended. From 1777 onward, the American Revolution, begun in part to defend the interests of property owners, would be fought mostly by men who owned little or no property at all.
The unparalleled perseverance of the armies of the United States through almost every possible suffering and discouragement for the space of 8 long years was little short of a standing miracle. George Washington.
As the Continental Army began to disband, Washington tried again to persuade Congress to provide his men with at least 3 months' back pay in cash. But the best they could do was issue a blizzard of paper certificates, vaguely promising to redeem them one day.
Some of the soldiers went off for home the same day their fetters were knocked off. Others stayed and got their final settlement certificates, which they sold to procure decent clothing and money sufficient to enable them to pass with decency through the country and to appear something like themselves when they arrived among their friends. I was among those. When the country had drained the last drop of service it could screw out of the poor soldiers, we returned adrift like old worn-out horses. Joseph Plum Martin.
That group of people are ordinary Americans below the level of ordinary. And they won the war because they never left. They stayed. That was it. They refused to leave. And you can sound pretty patriotic, but I don't think you can be patriotic enough about them.
We had lived together as a family of brothers for several years, had shared with each other the hardships, dangers, and sufferings incident to a soldier's life, had sympathized with each other in trouble and sickness, and now we were to be parted forever, as unconditionally separated as though the grave lay between us.
I wish the Constitution which is offered had been made more perfect, but I sincerely believe it is the best that could be obtained at this time. And as a constitutional door is opened for amendment hereafter, the adoption of it is, in my opinion, desirable.
And they were trying to create a system in which you could have a sufficiently powerful government that could work properly for its own people and the great powers of the world and still retain the freedoms of the individual. And that is the great issue that runs all the way through the revolution. It's a struggle between the possibilities of power and of liberty.
In order for the Constitution to take effect, the individual states had to ratify it. That would foster one of the most extensive public debates in history.
The people who created the American Revolution and created the American nation assumed that Americans would be involved, that they would be active citizens, not subjects. Being a citizen requires the kind of participation in the democracy that keeps it vibrant.
In the end, all 13 states did ratify the Constitution. But before consenting to live under the new federal government, the American people wanted to enshrine the liberties they had won in the Revolution. The Constitution was almost immediately amended with a Bill of Rights, guaranteeing freedom of worship and the separation of church and state, freedom of speech and assembly, the right to keep and bear arms, trial by jury, and a ban on cruel and unusual punishment. James Madison, who wrote the Bill of Rights, called the Constitution nothing more than the draft of a plan, nothing but a dead letter, until life and validity were breathed into it by the voice of the people.
Wonderful. All right, I'm going to stop the share there. All right, so that's where we're going to stop. And let me just come back. Okay, great. All right, so I heard that the sound was much better. Beautiful. Wonderful. Okay. Oops. Hit something. Sorry, hit something. All right. Wonderful. So we can always, applaud or whatever. It's hard to know what to do when you're on Zoom. You do like that for the ASL applause. So I'd love to return to, again, we wanted to try and make this a discussion as much as possible, using the chat as well as you unmuting yourself and joining in. I would like to, again, I ask what parts of the film most resonated with you, what most stuck out to you. I can talk about what most stuck out to me. I'll actually type it in the chat. I'll paraphrase it. Oops, hit the wrong button. Participation in democracy keeps it vibrant. And that was Dr. Annette Gordon-Reed towards the end. As well as the ending lines about, documents being a dead letter, right? And it's the voice of the people that brings life and validity to a piece of writing, to our Bill of Rights, to our founding documents. And I would love to know, so I will just pose a question. how do we build and sustain democracy today? And that's just something that I put. Let me close this. But I would love to hear what you all have to say. Now, don't be shy, right? Don't be shy, even if those recorded. Ah, yes, great. Well, you can unmute yourself.
Yes. That we stand up to the crazy things that are coming out of the White House is one way that we can sustain and retrieve our democracy. Get involved.
Get involved. What are some ways, and this is, I think this is another thing that strikes me about the film. There are so many ways to get involved, right? There's so many ways. So what are some ways, either, people who are here in the room that you're involved, how would you like to be involved? What are some things you would like to see in terms of involvement? I would love to hear that, because this clip is about the spirit of service here, right? I think the film argues that service is a huge part of thinking about what it means to be a citizen versus being a subject, right? To go from subject to citizen, that we, even the idea that we, the people, that we have a responsibility to one another. And that's a central part of how we think of ourselves as Americans. So I would love to hear, how do you all get involved, stay involved? How do you keep that spark going in your community? And I'll look in the chat as well. Beth Fox turned her camera on, so maybe she's going to tell us something. Maybe.
Yeah, Courtney, if I could just, sorry, my window is very bright behind me, but yeah, so if we could take some inspiration from the film and from the breadth of input, we tend to think about the founding fathers as and the military leaders. But we heard several women's voices there. We heard Joseph Plum Martin, a young guy. Ken Burns uses Betsy Ambler, a young woman as well, several times, not in the clips we saw, but in other parts of the film. And so, we tend to essentialize a lot sometimes about the revolution, but it really did have amazing breadth and scale and scope. And I think, that should help us today to try to remember that and to try to, know that our voice can matter in small ways and big ways. But the important thing is to, like the previous speaker said, to get involved and to record that voice in some way, like those voices were recorded at the time in the historical sources.
Yes. Yes. I've been to, a few of these conversations, and one of the important things that people have taken away from is the importance of recording how you feel about things, and learning how other people feel, but writing it down, archiving it, taking the photos, keeping the letters, labeling everything, so that, in 200 years, when, whoever the documentary maker, filmmaker is, when they come back, and they will have your name. And who knows? You might be in one of these documentaries centuries, from now. A picture of you on a bridge holding a sign, or you, someone in the chat says help to get out the vote. So maybe you standing in line are you registering folks? So, make sure you label everything so folks know who you are, who you were and are, and who the people were that you worked with. Right? So put their names on the pictures too, not just you. So you're the only one in the movie. This says, so volunteer in your local community, serve on any one of your town committees or boards. So I see that. So I see local. And if anybody's involved in their local community, I'd love to hear from you. What do you do? I teach free exercise classes through Exeter Parks and Recreation. I've done that for a very long time as a way to connect to my neighbors and promote health and to get people together, making friends and, getting, healthy. So that's a way that I have contributed to my community. I also donate. We have our community fridge right around the corner from me in the community pantry. And so I've cooked things. At my school, I advise our cooking club. And so I've told the kids about the fridge. And so they've made dishes for the community fridge. And so I'm really excited to see, small ways that I've engaged and helped out. Let's see. What else? Support the humanities. Of course, support the humanities. Yes. We have do something every day. Letter writing, making calls, asking questions of our elected officials. Yes. A group called Civil Discourse. Okay, we learned about a group that meets twice a month. Okay. So some way to get involved. Let's see. Oh, talk with neighbors. Well, that's good. That's always nice. Talking with our neighbors. Here's a question. This is from B. I keep wondering whether the value of having an educated population is no longer considered as important to support our democracy. Wondering whether the value of having an educated population. I'd love to hear more about that. What do people think? Let's see. Managing local elections takes a lot of very dedicated volunteers. They always need more. Yes, they do always need more. I feel like everybody's typing away. No, they are. There's certainly some in New Hampshire who believe public education is not serving a common good or benefit. Value of I keep thinking about the value of having an educated population. I wonder what you mean by an educated population. Do you mean educated in terms of, formal education, school, or do you mean civics? And I've been in some conversations and, people have talked about that, the lack of, at least what they see as a lack of civics in school, that we don't know how government works or how to participate in it. So I wonder if that's part of it. What else? Let's see. Oh, Anita Klein. I'm doing some of what Beth Fox wrote about. I support the ACLU, Planned Parenthood, etc. I've gone to No Kings events and will start volunteering at the Democrats' office on Epping Road in Exeter. Wonderful. Anita Klein, have you always been this engaged? And I know we started out and we asked what brings you, and a lot of the folks who wrote talked about our current moment as being a catalyst for getting involved, or at least coming tonight. Well, at least one woman, Nancy, said that history shook off of her as a child. And I'm wondering, for those who are involved now, is that something that you've always done? Have you always been involved in your local community? Or is that something that you grew into? Which is, and that I like that question, because when I hear people say, well, young people today and young people don't, because number one, I know that's not true. I know that there have always been young people who have been interested in citizenship and in democracy and things like that, and organizing. But I always wonder, folks who do it, how did you get started? So there might be somebody here on the Zoom who's like, I don't know what to do. And so I'd love to hear from you all. Oh, here we go. Ms. Klein, please.
Yes, I am a senior citizen. I've been retired since 2020. It was very important to me to um, somehow give back, and there were limited ways in 2020, but I did some volunteer work to help with the vaccination um, s- I, activities, and then I did some leafleting in the 2020 elections. It was contactless. Uh, li- yeah, leafleting, um and I'm trying to do more because I have some time to do it. As an academic at UNH, I had a pretty busy lifestyle, and but I'm coming back to things that I did as a much younger person.
Mm. On here, B says they were always involved. Were you always involved in the same issues, or did your interests change as as you moved, as you grew up, got older? Are there people who have, for example, they've been environmentalists from way back, right? They were, I think about when you sniff the six-pack rings. I told my students that, years ago, I'm 49. I said, years ago, somebody told me that the turtles go in the six-pack rings and they grow. And so I've been cutting six-pack rings for decades. I don't know if it's still true or not, but that's what they told me, and that's what I've been doing. So hopefully it's helping. But now they want us to use no plastic, so that's different. But, are the topics that moved you at one point in your life, are those still the topics that you get involved with now? Or are new topics coming up? Or what topics maybe you'd like to get involved with? So that's for you. Again, thinking about service. I still cut six pack. Yes, I do. I still cut them. I don't run with scissors because they told me, how to walk with a pair of scissors. Um, yeah, it's amazing. You see this: as elders engage the youngers, the future is theirs. Lend out wisdom and humor. Tell us how you do that. Yes, how do you do that? Wisdom and humor. That's good. I still protesting, participating in political committees, local government, giving time to nonprofits. Yes. So I see here, I am a child of the first Earth Day and have been an environmentalist ever since, but today's circumstances have forced me to think about what it takes to have a government which is positioned to consider the environment.
Mhm.
Oh, please jump in, Anita.
I've um, I've decided I had a very nice interaction one day when I went to one of the events at the um, at the bridge in Exeter where people um, protest and on a regular basis. And a young man of maybe 14 or 15 was walking by with some of his friends, and there were some comments made, and I talked to them, and then the young man said, when his friend said, "Oh, come on, let's get out of here," he said, "No, I want to talk to her." So I felt good about that. His father had once worked for the Forest Service. The Forest Service has had a really bad time in this administration, and we talked about different aspects of that. So um, I felt that was something that I did that I was pleased to do.
Good, good. Yeah, I see them on Friday evenings out there with their signs. And it makes me think of, and Michael, you typed this in about the founding legislation of the National Endowment for the Humanities includes democracy demands wisdom and vision. It must therefore foster and support a form of education and access to the arts and the humanities. Again, what I love about these discussions and this film is the ways that the art that happens on these posters, so political art. So how do you make it such that, how do you harness your creativity and deploy it in a way that, to go back to this line, lend out wisdom and humor, the way you can use wisdom and humor on a poster and someone can drive by and connect with it and want to get out and speak with you more. And also just my own just awe as someone who writes and who teaches writing, to imagine somebody reading something you wrote, centuries later, and making decisions based on it or judging you based on it. That to me is wonderful, the ways that writing and documents animate so much of this, right? Sentences like "all men are created equal," or phrases like "we the people," the establishment of a free press. So even saying like we need a free press, there's such a love of words and speech that I got from this documentary. Even at a time when I think about what I would be as a Black person, that I and all probably would not have access to this, but it's the words are still there, and the words are there for me too, even all these centuries later. I think that's really wonderful about it. Maybe somebody else will write something. Let's see. Oh, we have more. Oh, we got a lot of environmentalists. Okay. The EPA started in Nixon's presidency.
Well, Courtney, one of the things, this program we did not really put out as something for a younger audience, but a lot of these big watch parties are including high school groups. And I think about you, Courtney, as someone who is teaching a younger audience than many of us interact with on a regular basis. I wonder, from your point of view, like it was the question that came up earlier, right? How do we interact with a younger generation? How do we encourage them to take on a role? What are you seeing from your seat working with high school students?
Wow. I think, well, one thing is I'm very, and I again, I think I said this, I'm 49. And so I still feel like I'm young, but I'm getting up there I think paying attention to where they get their information from has been so important to me. When I ask them, what news sources do you use? What journalists do you follow? But they follow a lot of news from social media. So they get their news from TikTok. So they get news that someone has packaged for them. And that guides how they see things or what they think is important. And I don't want to disparage that, because I do think if that's the key place where they're getting their information, that's important. But it's also a place where young people are creating information for young people. So I think that's really cool. I also think at least the students where I work are sometimes feel overwhelmed. They feel like the problems of the day are just so big. It's just so much to fix, and they wonder what they can do, as their one self. And they can they get discouraged. But then at the same time, we'll have, like I said, we'll have a group of students who are interested in, food insecurity, and they'll hold, drives, food drives, and, they'll want to, tutor younger kids in the community. And so I think the same way in the chat, folks are saying they found a way to insert themselves. I think our students, young people, are finding ways to insert themselves into lives of service. But they still wonder if they're going to be able to make any money after, doing it. And who knows what AI is going to lead to with everything. I have no idea. No clue. But that's certainly something I see.
Well, stay tuned. AI is a conversation we're starting, next year. So
good.
We'll see how that goes. So.
Yeah, that's wonderful. But yeah. But they have such big hearts, and I tell them, I remember when I was their age and I had, big heart and just love for everything, wanted to discuss and debate everything. So I just hope they just keep that spark going. Definitely.
So I think it's almost 6:15. I think yes. We probably should start closing down now. Courtney, thank you so much for leading the conversation today, and thanks everybody for being here. Just a few things to close up tonight. One, you will be getting an email from us with a link to a survey about tonight's program. It's important that we hear from you about what you thought about tonight's program, but also we are talking about what this program looks like in the future. This program has had to change a lot because of some of the changes in our relationship with the federal government. So we are really trying to figure out what's important to people who tune in to Humanities at Home. So please fill out the survey, let us know what you're thinking, because we are really at a point where we want to make some changes to make sure that this program stays vibrant. We will be, as I hope, bringing Humanities at Home back in the fall, so stay tuned for that. As always, these programs are brought to you by you, right? The community here in New Hampshire supports us, and we do appreciate that. Thank you so much for making this possible. If you are interested in finding out more about supporting us, please go to our website, newhampshirehumanities.org, and also find out more about programs that are near you. Most of our programming, almost all of our programming is free across the state, and we would like to keep it that way. Finally, if you have other questions, please reach out to me personally or other staff members. Again, hearing from you is one of the most important things we have. So with a big thank you to Courtney for being our guide for the film tonight, and to NHPBS to making this film available in the short form so we didn't have to watch all 12 hours of it. Thank you all for being here. Stay dry out there. The rain is really coming down here in Concord, and we will see you all soon. Have a good night.